Hello and welcome to another painting video. In this video I'll be painting a Death Guard Tactical Marine for my new Horus Heresy army. I am a disciple of Mortarion in both 40k and 30k. I painted my tactical squad as if they were months in a battle zone, looking very weathered. Now you might notice that my marines have peculiar bodies and helmets. I did buy the new 20-man Mark III boxes from GW, but I decided to print third-party bodies and helmets because I am not a fan of the tiny, bow-legged stances of the GW Marines. Also, I wanted my Death Guard wearing spiky helmets. Let's begin, shall we? First, I primed the model black. I use Vallejo Black Primer with my airbrush. Although the model will have lots of light colors, I want to keep parts that are hidden back in the easy shadows. Next, I cover pretty much the entire model with Ushabti bone. I use my airbrush again. I do keep the model on an angle, making sure that parts that are in shadow stay mostly black. Now, from a more extreme angle, I spray the model with Screaming Skull with my airbrush. This will be the main color of the bear Ceramite. Time to switch back to the brush. I shade the model with Mortarion Grime. I mostly try to keep the shading where it's needed, instead of going over the entire model. I came back with Screaming Skull to highlight the armor and clean it up. With AK Interactive's Winter Camouflage Panel Liner, I shade all the panel lines and rivets. This enamel paint will flow nicely in the crevices. If you want to tidy this up, simply use some white spirit to remove excess paint. Again, I couldn't resist using Mortarion Grime. I loved this shade. The Bear Ceramite now has a greenish glow to it. A great subtle reference for things to come for these doomed Marines. The shoulder pads I kept separate and primed black as well. With the airbrush I spray on Castellan Green first. Then I spray on Death Guard Green, making sure just to hit the top of the shoulder pad, creating a highlight. I do the same with Nurgling Green. Just a quick burst with the airbrush will create a nice looking gradient on the shoulder pad. To bring out the dirty green armor, I shade it with Athonian Camoshade. This is a lovely dirty green, perfect for the Death Guard. On the main model I painted the left knee pad green as well. I did the same steps, but used my brush. Next, I'm painting the metal and brass. All the metal is painted with Iron Warriors. And the brass with Balthasar Gold. I shade all the metal and brass with Agrax Earthshade. I highlight the metal with Runefang Steel. And I highlight the brass with Canoptek Alloy. A pretty standard way to paint metal and brass, but it is effective and works really well. Let's continue with more details. All the hoses, inner suit, belt and gun casings are painted with Corvus Black. I shade all the previous parts with Known Oil. and highlight with Dawnstone. On the gun casings, I'm also painting some battle damage. You can also use a piece of foam for this to create random patterns. I add a second highlight of Administratum Grey on the gun casing, hoses and inner suit. Painting black is always a hassle, but I'm a big fan of Corvus Black. It's a really dark grey which allows some shading, making highlighting a little bit easier. Everything is now painted. On to adding some transfers. I bought the Death Guard transfer sheet and there are a lot of options to choose from. I cut out all the transfers that I need with my hobby knife. Next, I put the transfer in some water. While the transfer is preparing, I paint the area I want the transfer to go to with micro set. With tweezers, I pick up the transfer and carefully guide the transfer to the shoulder pad. With my tweezers, I then guide the transfer to the correct position. I wait till the micro set has dried. Then I apply micro sole. This will help conforming the transfer to the curved surface of the shoulder pad. And here are some examples of the transfers. I added the tactical arrow first. After all was dried, I carefully added the one symbol to the center of the arrow. The sergeant of the squad gets some additional symbols on his chest and on his shoulder pads. I want my Death Guard to look like they've been waging war for months on end. First, I add Rhinox hide with a piece of foam to the armor. Make sure that there's a little paint on the foam. This will create random patterns. I do the same with Nurgling Green on the green armor panels, as the Rhinox hide is a little bit too dark to see. For this project, I'm using the new rust effect from Dirty Down. I add the rust to where there is a lot of Rhinox hide. This paint reacts with water, so you can always remove excess with applying a brush with just water on it. I apply streaking grime to all the trims and rivets of the armor. You could also cover the entire model with streaking grime, but I don't think that's really necessary here. With white spirit and a makeup sponge, I remove the excess streaking grime. As a finishing touch, I apply Screaming Skull with a sponge to get some highlights back on the model. Now this looks more like a proper Death Guard. There are many ways to weather a model, like with a chipping medium. But I don't like that there's little control when using these techniques. With a sponge you can create random patterns and make the sponge as small or big as you want. This will make sure you get the level of weathering you want. The eyes on these helmets are very tiny. First, I paint the lens with Wild Rider Red. Next, I glaze on Wild Rider Red on the trim of the eye. The lens gets a highlight of Troll Slayer Orange. And I finish with a small dot of Uriel Yellow. I water down this paint as to blend it more with the orange. Time to paint a war zone. First, I use my airbrush to spray the contrast paint Agrax Sewer on the base and catch the boots as well. This will make sure the Death Guard is walking through a muddy landscape. I dry brush Steel Legion Drab on the base. And I do the same with Baneblade Brown. I also make sure to hit the boots again. With Wraithbone, I dry brush all the battlefield debris I have on my bases. I paint them with Basilicanum Grey. Because of the Wraithbone, we'll get some easy highlight. I come back with the Dirty Down Rust effect. With a damp brush, I come back and brush away the rust from the edges of the metal debris, creating a highlight. Finally, I paint the trim of the base with Corvus Black. And here we have a squad of tactical marines, ready to wage civil war in the name of the War Master and the Deathlord Mortarion. I'm really happy how they turned out. Using some new techniques and my airbrush, this will become a worthy addition to my collection. Let me know in the comments which legion you're painting for the Horus Heresy. I've added the third-party bits I purchased to the description of the video, so you can check them out as well. Stay tuned for my next video where I'll show you how I will make some simple conversions on a Praetor model and see me paint it. In the meantime, be sure to check out my Instagram where I post pictures of current projects and behind the scenes stuff. But for now, thanks for watching.